Wow. The exhibit floor is open.
Here we are again, Cure America with Star Parker at NRB, an association of Christian communicators from around the world. There are over 4,000 here. Everyone that's in radio, TV, broadcasting, print, podcasting, you name it, we're here. Exciting week we're looking forward to. And in fact, the exhibit hall just opened. That's why I have the scissors. We just were a part of the ribbon cutting. We are going to do full 2 weeks at NRB because everyone who's anyone is here, and you will hear their testimonies, you will hear their messaging exclusively on some of them right here on Cure America. But very exciting, my first part of this show, put on your seatbelt because Governor Ron DeSantis was here last night speaking to over 4,000 Christian communicators here in Orlando, Florida, and he couldn't get his words out because there were so many standing ovations. He is a rock star, no pun intended, because I'm star, but I'm telling you, if his messaging is getting ready to enter into the presidential, which by the time you see this, it may have already been done, I can see that he is going to go straight to the top of the ticket because he has the right message for Christian communicators. He has the right message for Christian worldview, the biblical worldview, to stop the madness that has been going on in legislation, in law, in Washington, D.C. This country belongs to free people. And what we've experienced over the last few years is unacceptable. And we're going into a whole new time. People are getting up, getting excited about taking the country toward God's kingdom, being a free nation under God. So get your seatbelts on because right now you're going to hear from Ron DeSantis live right here at NRB, the association now gathering of Christian communicators from around the world.
I know it's not my words that helps a person, it's God's word. It's the power of the gospel.
God loves you, but sin separates us from God. God sent his son, Jesus Christ, from heaven to this earth to take our sins. He died on a cross for our sins. He was buried for our sins, but on the third day, God raised his son to life. God is patient with us. He's not wanting anyone to perish. The Bible says, but he wants everyone to come in repentance. And so if you come tonight to Christ, you've got to come willing to turn from your sin. You say, well, Franklin, I don't think I can. But you ask Christ into your heart, he'll give you that strength. He'll give you that power. But you've got to be willing to say, God, help me. I want to change. I want to trust you. By faith, trust Jesus Christ.
We are honored to have with us this evening Governor Ron DeSantis. He is the 46th governor of Florida. A native Floridian, DeSantis graduated with honors from Yale University and Harvard Law School. While at Harvard, he earned a commission in the United States Navy as a JAG officer. Go Navy. During his active duty service, DeSantis deployed to Iraq as an advisor to the U.S. Navy SEAL commander in support of the SEAL missions in Fallujah and Ramadi and the rest of the Al-Anbar province. His military decorations include the Bronze Star for meritorious services and the Iraq Campaign Medal. DeSantis served as a federal prosecutor where he targeted and convicted child predators. He was elected to Congress in 2012 and advocated for congressional term limits and a balanced budget amendment. He also spearheaded oversight efforts to expose malfeasance in the IRS and other federal agencies. The governor is married to Casey DeSantis, an Emmy Award-winning television host. Ron and Casey DeSantis are the parents of 3 children, Madison, Mamie, and Mason. Please help me welcome to the stage Florida Governor Ron DeSantis.
Thank you. Welcome to the free state of Florida. We're so glad to see you. Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here. We're proud of what we've been able to accomplish in this state. Really, since the minute I took office, my view is I don't know who's going to succeed me as governor, but they're not going to have any meat on the bone because I am going to get everything done. But I will acknowledge this. My first act as governor was actually not doing anything related to public policy. My first act as governor after getting sworn in on the steps of the old Capitol was to go back to the governor's residence, and Casey and I were able to get our son Mason baptized. He had been born the previous March, but I was a U.S. congressman. We were running. We had a lot of trouble figuring out how we were going to string together a baptism with everything going crazy. And so we decided, since everyone was going to be in town for the inauguration, we would do it then. Now, we had been in Israel many years before that together, and my wife brought back from that trip water from the Sea of Galilee. And it was, we had no kids at the time, and it was, as we have kids, we are going to use that water to baptize them. Our daughter Madison was born 2016, no problem, without a hitch, used the water great, obviously had more. So Mason, we do it in the governor's mansion. And, you know, we are just middle-class people. We've never had anyone pick up after us. So it was in just a plastic water bottle like you can get at the convenience store, except the label was written in Hebrew, but still. And we did everything. We went off on our way, kind of left everything as is. The next morning, I asked my wife, where's our Sea of Galilee water? She's like, I think it's downstairs. Well, I went downstairs, and everything had been cleaned up, and there was no more water from the Sea of Galilee. And so I announced at an event a couple weeks later, because I had mentioned in my inauguration speech, I said, we're not doing a parade, we're going to go back, we're going to do the baptism, and I have water from the Sea of Galilee. And so I announced that, and within 24 hours, there were people in Israel digging into the Sea of Galilee, and they sent me this beautiful glass jar filled with water from the Sea of Galilee, and that sat on my desk in the state capitol until our daughter Mamie was born in 2020, and we used it for her. So we're excited to recognize the importance of the Holy Land. I actually just got back from being in Israel. You know, Israel's thousands of years old, yet 75 years young, and I was able to speak at the 75th anniversary of the modern state of Israel. And all you got to do, you have anybody that ever questions anything, just bring them over there, open up the Bible, and walk the steps of everything that's in there. My son, who was 4 for Christmas, what he wanted more than anything was a slingshot so he could be like David. And we were able to take him to the city of David, and he's able to see where David lived when he was the king of Israel. And you can even see where David and Goliath had the battle right down the road. So it really brings this to life in a way that has a profound effect on so many people who do it. And in Florida, I pledged as governor that we would be the most pro-Israel state in these United States. And we've delivered on that promise. Because we understand that it is the cradle of our Judeo-Christian civilization, and those are the values that undergird our Constitution and our republic here in America. And so we've taken aim at those who seek to marginalize and destroy the state of Israel. When I became governor, one of the first things I did was go after Airbnb, who are doing BDS against Israel. We put them on our dink list for investment, and guess what? Airbnb backed down shortly thereafter. We most recently did legislation going after a host of different things involving ESG, but what they're trying to do with ESG in part is they're folding in BDS to be part of credit ratings on things like Morningstar, to penalize companies that have these presences in Judea and Samaria. So I signed the legislation, and we are not going to let Morningstar do that in the state of Florida. So we've made it very clear in the Sunshine State, BDS is DOA. So I really believe that when you get into office, people don't want merely words, they want deeds. And we've been active in making Florida a better place. One of the things I was able to do when I became governor was I inherited a very liberal state Supreme Court. But there were 4 liberals and 3 conservatives. But the good news was we have age limits for justices. So the minute I got sworn into office, 3 of the 4 liberal justices were off the court because of age. So I was able in my first month of office to replace 3 liberal justices with 3 conservative justices. And that made our state Supreme Court from the most liberal in the country, arguably, to now the most conservative Supreme Court in the country. And I've got another appointment we're going to make this week to fulfill a vacancy from a retiring conservative justice. So I will have ended up doing 7 appointments throughout my tenure. All of them have been rock solid. They understand the law and Constitution. And judicial activism in Florida is now officially dead. We've killed it with these justices, and that's what we need to do. And it raises an interesting question. You know, the U.S. Supreme Court, with some of the recent appointments, is in a much better spot than it's been in a long time. But I think if you look over, you know, the next 2 presidential terms, there is a good chance that you could be called upon to seek replacements for Justice Clarence Thomas and Justice Samuel Alito. And the issue with that is you can't really do better than those 2. They are the gold standard for jurisprudence. And so you got to make sure that we're appointing people who are going to be as close to that standard as possible. If you replace a Clarence Thomas with somebody like a Roberts or somebody like that, then you're going to actually see the court move to the left. And you can't do that. I also think if you look over those 8 years, you very well could be called upon to replace Chief Justice John Roberts and perhaps even someone like Justice Sotomayor. So it is possible that in those 8 years, we'd have the opportunity to fortify Justices Scalia and Alito and Thomas, as well as actually make improvements with those others. And if you were able to do that, you would have a 7-2 conservative majority on the Supreme Court that would last a quarter century. So this is big stuff, very important that gets done right. I also think that leadership is really about doing what's right, not worrying about all the chatter, not worrying about any of that. You know, I got elected in 2018 by 32,000 votes. That was less than 0.5% in a very large state. A lot of people didn't give me a chance to win that election, but because Florida had been a one-point state politically, people told me before I became governor, go don't rock the boat, be very ginger. It's a very delicate political balance in the state of Florida. Be careful what you do. And I understood that advice, but I rejected that advice. My job is to lead, and I'm going to lead with vigor and energy, and I'm going to pursue the bold policies that are going to make a difference. We never looked at polls, never put our finger in the wind, always went on offense, and understood that the test of leadership is really if you're willing to stand firm when it's not easy to do so. When you have intense criticism, when they're coming after you, sometimes you have to stand all alone. And we had to do that during the COVID-19 pandemic. We bucked the conventional wisdom. We bucked the establishment. We bucked the media. And we bucked people like Dr. Fauci to keep this state free, to protect our churches, to protect our school children, and the state is better off as a result of it. My job as a leader is to care more about the jobs of the people I represent than trying to protect my own political hide. So I took the hits so that we could keep the state free, and lo and behold, when you do what's right, even though it wasn't popular at the time with a lot of the elites, people appreciate it. They see that you're willing to fight for it. So fast forward a few years after that, November of 2022, we don't win by 32,000 votes. We win by over 1.5 million votes. Largest percentage of the vote any Republican governor candidate has ever gotten in the history of Florida. We got over 60% of the Hispanic vote. We won independents by 18%. We even won counties like Miami-Dade, which had used to be very blue, and we won it by double digits. I think what it shows is that people respond to leadership. People respond when you are somebody that they know they can count on, that they know you're willing to stand firm for what you believe. Heck, even when they disagree with you, they appreciate the fact that they know where you stand. So Florida, we're no longer a swing state. You know, we're now a red state because of this leadership, and it's very important. One of the things I'm most proud of is that the state of Florida stands unequivocally in defense of the family and in defense of our children. And we have done more to protect children than any state in the country. Of course, just a few weeks ago, I was fortunate enough to sign the Heartbeat Bill, which is the strongest pro-life bill Florida's seen in its modern history. We got it done. And let's be very clear on this, that when we are acting to protect an unborn child that has a detectable heartbeat, that is humane. That is not harsh. It is the right thing to do. But we also understand that being pro-life means being pro-life once the baby is born. And so we have provided unprecedented support in the state of Florida for mothers. We've expanded medical coverage for low-income mothers to 1 full year of postpartum health care coverage. We increased by $25 million our pregnancy support services program to meet physical and emotional needs of would-be mothers, and that's whether they decide to keep the child or put it up for adoption. We want to be supportive in either of those instances. And under the leadership of my wife, Casey, our First Lady, we have launched Hope Florida, a pathway to prosperity, which seeks to empower people and get them off of government dependency and with people who are actually going to look after for their well-being and offer them support, people in the community. We have a care portal where people can go in with needs. Maybe a mother needs a crib for a newborn, and it goes into the portal. Guess who we enlist? Not government bureaucrats. We enlist churches. We enlist community groups. We enlist private businesses. And you can go in and people want to be helpful. So they'll go to the home, they'll help out, and guess what? Once you've made that connection, that mother is not going to go back to the government office. She's going to go to that church that helped her, or she's going to go to the nonprofit that helped her. That is a sustainable pathway to independence and self-sufficiency. And it's better for the child and it's better for the mother. We also understand that too many kids are growing up without a father in the home. So we've launched a fatherhood initiative and put significant resources behind it. We're working with groups that are addressing the needs of fathers and trying to get them engaged with their kids. But even if you can't do that, because unfortunately we have kids that are born and their fathers are in prison, we are using these resources to foster mentorship opportunities for kids that do not have that. And if you look at when kids do well and when they don't, it's oftentimes when somebody is willing to take an interest in them, when somebody is there to provide mentorship. Ideally, it would be the father with the mother, but if that can't happen, if you have somebody in the community that takes an interest, you know, that child's going to do so much better in the future. You look at the people who are in prison, and I remember Coach Tony Dungy saying this. He's helping us with this here in Florida. He said when he would minister in prisons, he did it one time and he figured out they're not there because they were poor necessarily or because of race or ethnicity. The reason they were there more than any other one, they did not have a father in the home. And so we know what works, we know what we need to do, and in Florida, we are doing that, and we're also doing record support for foster care and adoption. It's important that we do that and that we make it easier for people to help these children. Our tax policies are probably the most family-friendly in the country. Now, we do not have an income tax in the state of Florida, and for those of you who are from states where you can't say that, you should try it sometime. It works out pretty good. But what we do have is sales tax, and we're fortunate because people visit Florida and they pay the sales tax for us, so we as Floridians pay less than we otherwise would since we lead the nation in tourism. But what we've done is we have now permanently excluded from sales tax every baby-related item: cribs, strollers, diapers, wipes, clothing, formula, whatever you need to raise a baby, it's tax-free in the state of Florida. We also understand that families have other needs and other things they need to make ends meet. We just did a 50% reduction in tolls for our commuter. It's saving people $100 a month in some instances, and that's money, especially in an era of Biden inflation, that can stay in their pocket. We even said, because we understand families can be large, we even said no sales tax on pet food and pet medication, because they're part of our families too. And we even said no taxes on gas-powered stoves, because they are coming after that, and we're not going to let it happen here in Florida. But part of standing up for families is to make sure that our school system is providing kids with an education, not with an indoctrination. We believe in the rights of parents to direct the education and upbringing of their children. Parents have a right to know what curriculum is being used in their kids' classrooms or what books are being used in their libraries, and we've empowered parents to do that, and parents all throughout Florida have blown the whistle when they have seen things like pornographic materials in the library. Now, the media will say that removing a pornographic book from a 6th grade school shelf is, quote, a book ban, but I can tell you, adults can purchase books what they want. But making sure stuff is age appropriate is precisely the role that we should be playing. And I did a press conference, and we called it Exposing the Book Ban Hoax, because that's what it is. They're saying it's and it's not. But before we had parents talk, before I talked, I just played a video. And it just showed the graphic images of what the parents in Florida have objected to. The news stations that were carrying the press conference cut their feed because they said it was too graphic. Well, if it's too graphic for the 6 o'clock news, how is it okay for a 10-year-old school child? We believe in empowering parents with the ability to choose the school of their choice. And we enacted the largest expansion of school choice in American history, universal education savings accounts. If a parent wants to have their child get a religious education, they now have the scholarship money to be able to do that if they can't afford it. We've also made sure that our curriculum is reflecting our core values. We've eliminated toxic ideologies like critical race theory in our K-12 schools. We're not teaching kids to hate this country or to hate each other with your tax dollars. No, we're going to teach kids. We're providing students with a new emphasis on American civics. They need to understand the foundations of our country. They need to understand our Constitution and our Bill of Rights. They need to understand what it means to be an American. And part of that is we take one day every year, and we're the only state that does this, to provide instruction to school children about the evils of communist regimes throughout history. We're telling the truth about Marxism and Leninism. We flatly reject the inclusion of gender ideology in our K-12 schools. It is wrong for a teacher to teach a 3rd grader that they were born in the wrong body or that their gender is a choice. And in Florida, I just signed legislation eliminating the use of pronouns in the schools. You can't force somebody to choose pronouns. We're not going to let them try to impose the idea of gender fluidity on our kids, particularly our young elementary school kids. And if Disney doesn't like that, well, here I stand. I am not backing down 1 inch. I am going to do what's right. And we are going to make sure we're standing up for our children, because the children are more important than the almighty dollar. We have acted swiftly to protect the integrity of women's sports. It is wrong to swim on the men's team for 3 years and then switch to the women's team and win the women's national championship, that not only takes away opportunities from our girls and our women athletes, it's also asking us to be complicit in a fraud. We will not do that. And as sad as it is, we even have to discuss this. In Florida, it is illegal to perform gender surgeries on minors. You will lose your medical license if you do that. And if you take off the private parts of a minor, you're going to jail for doing that with the legislation we have just signed. All of these problems that we see in education grow out of what I call the woke mind virus. This is a form of cultural Marxism. It's an attack on merit and achievement. Ultimately, woke represents a war on the truth. Well, since woke represents a war on the truth, we in Florida are waging a war on woke. We are fighting back against things like cancel culture. We have signed legislation kneecapping ESG in the state of Florida. In our pension fund, with woke banking, they can no longer discriminate against you because you're a Christian or because you believe in the Second Amendment. We are holding these Wall Street banks accountable, and we are also fighting back against the weaponization of government. We have a government that will target parents going to school board meetings. They will target pro-life activists. They will allow lunatic leftists to protest illegally in front of our Supreme Court justices' homes because of the Dobbs decision. And they are now in the FBI saying observant Catholics represent some type of threat to society. Make no mistake, weaponized government is one faction of society turning the reins of power against those people they don't like. And the people that are in power now do not like people of faith. And so we have to get this government under control. We have to make sure that the bureaucracy is reconstitutionalized and that ultimately the government is returned to its rightful owners, we, the American people. We're fighting back. We're standing up for religious liberty. We just signed a bill to make sure that a school before an athletic contest isn't going to be penalized if they have a moment of prayer before a football game. Sad that we even have to do legislation for that, but we did. We also enacted expanded conscience protections for our physicians. Nobody who's training to be a doctor should ever have to do things that violate their conscience, like be complicit in abortion. So I think if you look around our country, it's almost like things are upside down. There's a lot of pessimism out there, but I think that what we've done in Florida should inspire people with a sense of hope. American decline is not inexorable. It is a choice. A great American comeback is attainable, and freedom sure is worth fighting for. And when you see the chaos and the deceit in the world around us, it should prompt us to look higher. God has blessed us with freedom, and our country's Declaration of Independence is one of the few that recognizes that our God-given rights predate the government, and that government's creation is to protect the rights we already have because of God's hand. So we have a responsibility to preserve the freedom that has been endowed to us by our Creator. We must restore a sense of sanity to our society. We must restore normalcy to our communities, and we must restore integrity to our institutions. Our founders understood that freedom is fragile. You could have the best Declaration of Independence in the world. You could have the best Constitution in the world. They do not run on autopilot. When they met in Philadelphia to frame the Constitution in 1787, they came armed with having studied the history of every republic and the history of mankind because they wanted to get lessons about how they could govern this new American republic. And what they determined was there was only really one thing in which every republic in history had in common, and it was this. Every single one of them had failed. And so they really believe that it fell to the United States of America to determine, can people really govern themselves? Can we have a society based on the idea that our rights come from God, not from the generosity of the state? Can we have a society based on the idea we live under a rule of law, not the rule of individual men? Or were mankind forever destined to live under various forms of despotism? And they fully expected that we would be the ones that would answer that question. I can tell you it's not going to be easy to restore the glory of this country, but it is necessary to do so. And it's necessary not just for us, our future, our kids, our grandkids. It's also necessary so that we do our part to pay our debt for those people who've sacrificed on our behalf throughout our history. One of the things I used to do when I would go to Washington, D.C. is there was one route that the plane could take going into Reagan Airport, and it would go flush parallel to the National Mall. So if you look to the left side of the plane, you would see beautiful panoramic views of the Lincoln Memorial, the reflecting pool, the Washington Monument, other monuments, and then all the way perched up on the hill, the beautiful U.S. Capitol building, and you felt a sense of pride for what those monuments and what that Capitol building symbolized. But I realized after doing that trip a few times that the best monuments for our country were not actually out the left side of the plane on the National Mall. Because if you looked out the right side of the plane, you looked over the Potomac River, you saw a series of little monuments, very nondescript, orderly arranged over sloping hills in a place called Arlington National Cemetery. And you can have all these great political figures, you can have great ideals and principles, you can have a great constitution, but if you don't have people that are willing, when duty calls, to stand up, put on a uniform, risk their lives, and in some instances give that last full measure of devotion, then none of those ideals or principles are going to amount to very much. And so their sacrifices are why we have an opportunity to preserve a free society. And it won't be easy. It will require sacrifice, but the sacrifices we're called upon to make pale in comparison to the sacrifices that those brave men and women and those who paid the ultimate sacrifice. And so what I say is, get ready, put on the full armor of God, stand firm for the truth, and don't ever, ever back down. We appreciate what we've done in Florida. We're proud of what we've accomplished in Florida, but I can tell you this, I have only begun to fight. Thank you all. God bless you all. God bless the United States, and God bless the free state of Florida. Thank you. You enjoy this convention. Thank you. Thank you so much. God bless you all. We'll see you soon.
Today, a student in public school will pray or lead a Bible study. Today, a pastor will preach boldly the truth of the Scriptures without fear of the IRS. Today, the life of an innocent child will be saved, and a mother will experience the joy of a newborn baby. A distraught woman will find hope and choose life rather than death. Today, there is a strong voice defending God's created natural order of marriage and family. There is a defender of freedom in the courtroom and in the halls of Congress and in legislative bodies across the land. Today, all of this is possible because of the ministry of Liberty Counsel. People from all over America will find help and hope because of Liberty Counsel. The adversity they face will be turned into victory. Case by case, law by law, person by person, Liberty Counsel is advancing religious freedom, the sanctity of human life, and the family through litigation, education, and public policy. And that is the mission of Liberty Counsel, to restore the culture by advancing life, liberty, and family.
Okay, I know you already took your seat belts off because you could not be still listening to Ron DeSantis, the governor of the great state of Florida right now, and it sounds like a lot of potential to do something else. So thank you, Ron DeSantis, for that incredible message. But now I have an amazing friend with me. In fact, Sam Brownback Oh, we were trying to figure out how long we've known each other since the Congress in the 90s. How am I still so young? And so are you.
I was going to say, Star, you look the same as when I first met you. That's
I actually think God
Way
does that on purpose. He makes us all age together, so we all think we look like we did when we first met. I don't know what it is till we see our grandkids, and it's like, we have gray hair now.
Okay,
what happened? But Sam,
there?
many of you may remember, was in the Congress during that time, went to the Senate, went on to be the governor of the great state of Kansas, and then went on to join the Trump administration to become, I think we were an ambassador on
for international religious freedom.
International religious freedom. And last year here at NRB, you spoke on those issues. We're here at NRB. I'm telling you, if you do not know about NRB, an association of Christian communicators, you need to look it up, get on it, and stay there, and then join us next year, February. But in the meantime, Sam, last year, you spoke on terrorism. You spoke on international challenges. This year, domestic? What are you doing? What are you doing? What are we doing?
Well, the problem is international religious freedom, which is happening internationally, where you get all this persecution, Christian persecution, the highest level it's ever been around the world. But we're now seeing more of it coming domestically. The religious persecution in the United States is growing, and any ground you lose in the United States on religious freedom gets magnified overseas, because everybody watches here and sees what's the limitations, what will happen here in the United States, and if they can crowd in on religious freedom here, they'll do more of it overseas. So that's why I'm talking about what's happening domestically.
Well, now you're saying from the standpoint of those that are very focused on destroying Christianity or biblical worldview internationally. I want to back up a moment and put ourselves in the seat of those that are watching America that are under that persecution. That must be very difficult, because when you were ambassador, you were telling me stories that sent chills not only, but an appreciation that we lived in America. So it would be important for us to point to what's happening here when it comes to religious freedom and are losing that, and the impact on those that are sitting in the bottom of some dungeon right now around the world, that are in the slavery, that are waiting for it to be beheaded. Put us in what you're seeing here in America that we should be concerned about. Tell us what your speech is.
Really what I'm seeing and what's taking place in the United States is this kind of crowding of religious freedom. So people are, and Christian groups, social conservative groups are getting debanked. They're getting deplatformed. They're getting thrown out by their data processor or provider because they're usually not told why. It just happens. Right. And yet you're entitled to free exercise in the United States. You are entitled to freely be the person you want to be on any sort of religious conviction or none at all that you want to be in the United States, and that's starting to get crowded. In the education system, we're seeing this indoctrination so much taking place, K-12 and higher education. You got Christian groups that can't rent spaces, sometimes on colleges. Now, usually you can win the lawsuit if you push back. You're seeing it in the healthcare providers, sometimes people that are healthcare providers that are saying, look, I don't want to do the same-sex, or I mean, I don't want to do the change. Children, huh? A child from a boy to a girl.
Don't know.
And yet being told, okay, that's what we're going to do. That's what you have to do if you're going to be a doctor. You're going to be a pharmacist. And these are all things that crowd in on people's religious freedom. And we've got to stop it now, because you have that right to practice your faith freely, peacefully, in public or in private, in the public commercial space or in private space. So that's what we've got to stand for.
But now there's a conflict, I think, that is arising in the discussions, because we came to Washington during the welfare reform, during the time that many conservatives were saying we need a limited role of government. So now we're hearing backlash from the left that's trying to indoctrinate, that's trying to push against, that's trying to build a totalitarian state to where there's no Christian witness in the public square. And they're saying, oh no, you're stepping in the areas you shouldn't. The corporate is supposed to be free market. How come they have a right to now deplatform you? Wait a minute. The schools are public. They have a right to teach what they want to their children. What do you say to that part of confusion, if you will, because people are saying, how do we reconcile these two things?
You know, Star, if the companies would just stay in the private, if they just stay in commercial space and just say, you're right, we just do commercial things, which is what I think the companies ought to do in the first place. Just stay in your commercial space. But when Bud Light goes to push a social campaign of where they're trying to push change on people, you're no longer just making beer.
Or Disney. We're in Florida.
Disney. Here we are at Disney
The
properties.
governor just mentioned it in his speech that we just let our audiences hear in full, where he said, look, this is not about Disney and whether they're able to locate in Florida. This is kindergarten, first, second, third graders. We're just talking about, we don't want them talking sex in their classroom.
And why not just educate them about reading and writing and arithmetic? I mean, our test scores are abysmal.
Yeah.
They are abysmal. And what are we doing? You're wanting to talk indoctrination and sexual gender ideology before the age of 10?
Right.
Well, what about just talking about math?
Well, it would help.
Or what about just talking about English?
Yeah.
I mean,
especially post-COVID. I mean, my goodness, kids are already way far behind. So what is your message then? What is it that you're going to be saying to these 4,000 Christian communicators from around the world, many of whom already know you because you're internationally known in this space?
I'm saying to them, look, we've got to fight. Each generation must fight for their own freedoms. We need to fight for it nationally. That's why we formed up this National Committee for Religious Freedom, National Council for Religious Freedom.
Okay, wait, now slow down because I want people to hear. So you have now an association. What is this?
Yeah, National Committee for Religious Freedom,
and a National Committee for Religious Freedom. Is this in the private sector?
Yeah, it's a C4 organization, the NCRF, that people can go and support. And then we want to build state affiliates. We need to build a Florida for religious freedom, like the National Right to Life movement, where you've started with national entities, and then each of them you started into state entities, where you had Kansans for religious freedom, Kansans for life, because these fights are going on in state, they're going on in local level, they're going on in the private sector, they're going on in healthcare, they're going on in education, and we can win this fight.
I think we can too. So
but we got to organize.
Well, now tell us about that, because that was my question. What are you doing? What are you asking people to do? To join this committee, or what is the next step to get where you are and what you're doing, so that they can either support your effort and or be educated about your effort?
They can go on our website, thencrf.org, thencrf.org, and then if they're in a particular state, they can get they can contact us about getting organized there.
Okay,
they
so
can
they would
contact
become
about
the organizer. So this is something you're doing grassroots, you guys?
Yes.
We're going to build this with you. We're going to be there for you and get you the information you need to fight.
Yes, because you got to do it. And then they could join our Chased Away campaign.
Chased Away?
Yes.
Oh, you hearing that? Well, you're kind of chased away. Tell me about that one, because people are. I think they're ready to fight back. You know, one of the things that happened during COVID is people were able to sit down for a minute. You know, our lives get so busy, and the decent people that are in the quieter communities, the 100 million that get up and go to church on Sunday morning and then do the right thing all week, they found out information during COVID that they had no idea. So we feel like we're catching up. So what is this Chased?
Well, what we're asking there is that if you have been deplatformed, or if your group has been debanked or fired by your provider, and you believe it was because you're a social conservative group, you're a Christian affiliated group, contact us on that, and then we're getting that information to state attorney generals and to members of Congress, and we hope ultimately as well to regulatory agencies, saying this should not happen. You should not be fired by your insurance company, by your the platform provider, by your data provider,
or
just
the
because,
or a bank. You guys
bank.
are working on the bank. I think you were.
Yes, we were, and we got fired by our bank.
Oh my God.
You know, and you're going, this should not happen, but we need to collect those stories and then get them into people that can do something about it, so that we can start shining a light on these things. This should not happen where you have a free exercise clause, the first of the First Amendment in the United States. It's our basic human right. It's the human right closest to the soul, and we've got to stand up and fight for it here.
Oh my goodness. I'm so glad you stopped by Cure America, because I tried to catch you, I think, last year. We may have even caught you a little bit. And now you get to hear what he's doing right now. And go to the website. Say it again, because we're here at NRB.
TheNCRF.org. TheNCRF.org.
You know, I want to ask you one quick question, though. I know you got to run on to your next interview, and then you have your presentation. But one quick question about this deplatforming, and you said if you know you have, how do you know? Because our website was just taken down the day we're on our way. My team was up at 2 o'clock in the morning trying to figure out why this thing had an error from Riddick's or something like that. How do you know when you have gathered up 100,000 people on your Facebook like we have, and then it's only getting to 1,000 people. Where do you go to find out that they're blocking you and you don't know that they're blocking you, number one? Or how do you know that that's what happened? Or was it just a mistake that all of a sudden your website's down the day before you go for a week-long conference?
Well, and there are cases where it is there's just some sort of data process, there's just some sort of error within the system. But it's when it becomes more systematic, or there's no reason behind it, or it looks like it got bounced up and somehow somebody in the review process, and so many of these organizations are so big and there's so much of a black box that you don't know, that you just got to investigate. And so then you turn it in, and then let's get it to the right people that can investigate situations like that, particularly a number of these Republican attorney generals. And now you've got a number of conservative state treasurers who invest pension funds for states in these companies are starting to pull back and say, if you're going to act this way, we don't want the money from the people of Kansas or the people of another state, people of Florida, invested in your company if you're going to treat people this way. We've not taken the power we have.
I know, exactly.
Most of these big companies are big red states. If people that would vote their ownership stocks, they would be 80% conservative companies, and yet most of them move left.
That's right.
That's your and my problem, that we haven't helped organize people to push back on these companies.
And own. You said something really important here, because a lot we hear, oh, let's just boycott. No, we're not going to boycott ourselves out of existence. That's what they want.
No.
Buy their stock and push back.
That's right. And
take over, get on the board.
But vote, yes. And we ought to have a person of faith on all of these major company boards.
You're going to have look what California tried to do. You got to have a black, you got to have a gay, you got to have a woman, you got to have it. No, why don't we just start moving ourselves up the food chain and
just saying
boards.
you've got to have somebody.
But we need to do it,
And if we own the companies, if it's conservatives that own the companies, it's our fault for not doing it.
I could talk to you all day, but I know you got to go. But even on this whole Disney question, it was like, you guys got to be kidding. They're marketer children, and they're going to start getting. I think they in the back rooms are saying, "What have we stepped into?"
I hope they've said that, and I hope they start backing up, because these companies should just stay being companies and businesses and not being social activists.
They're not social activists.
And if you're going to be a social activist, then why not from the right? Why not stand for pro-life?
Well, that's true.
Why not stand for some basic values like that? Instead, they go, oh, no, we can't do that. Why not?
Why not? I like what you said at first. Just do your business. That's what they're supposed to do. Sell widgets. We'll do the idea arena. Sam, thank you. Sam Brownback. You heard all about his work. Make sure you go to his website, because he's doing some powerful things, and you will see him often here at NRB and other spaces. I'll be right back after this. I told you everyone is here at NRB. Well, one of the people here at NRB is the chairman of NRB. You better be here. Frank Wright. Thank you for stopping by. I know you have an incredibly busy schedule, because we've got a week of excitement. And you came out of, 3 days of board meetings?
I only came to this place to come and see you, Star. The rest of these NR people, they're all dead to me. It's just you.
That's not true.
No, it's not true.
But I tell you,
I'm glad to be here.
I know. Frank is one of the main reasons that I'm on the NRB board, not just the board of directors, but their executive committee. And I think the reason that he put me on there is because he thinks I don't do any work on anything, so he was going to assign me all of these things to do. His resume is long. He has just started a new company called Deep Scan Media. I'm going to tell you something about this company, even though we're hiring them first at Cure. It's for all of the smaller groups, well, big groups too. You've heard of BDO kind of thing, where someone needs to come in and help you really build your ministry, to really build all of the components so that it will last into the future. And that's what he's done here, and now he's doing it as your own business. I think after what you've done here at NRB, to turn everything around and get it on a footing to go into its 80th anniversary. Thank you for joining me on Cure America.
Star, it's great to be here, and thank you for even mentioning that. But Cure is more important than what I'm doing. I'm trying to help people like Cure and other organizations do what God's called them to do. And so what you're doing is answering a call. I'm more like Aaron and Hur, who held up the arms of Moses when he was when Israel is doing battle, I'm trying to help you and others, but the mission is the important thing. And that's the great part about NRB, isn't it? Even in these early days of the convention, the theme, it's the gospel, it's the gospel. We will not change the world, but the gospel will change hearts and minds and families and communities and nations, and the gospel will change the world.
And the gospel will change the world. And so that's where we can go into NRB, an association of Christian communicators from all over the world. We just sat down with Sam Brownback, the former ambassador on religious freedoms, who is now telling us that, hey, look, we're going to go into a persecution time ourselves. We better be ready and equipped. Well, you as the leader of the NRB over the last few years have seen the tensions rise when it comes to the need for such an organization. Tell us a little bit about the organization, and then I want to get into the value of Deep Scan, because it's critically important. A lot of reasons we're in the situation we are as a society is because while, yes, our mission is most important, we forget a lot of the details to be able to do the mission. Yeah. And then we end up with pastors who have to work full time, or others that are part-time in it through their mission that God has called them. So first, let's start at NRB. Who are we? What do we do? And then let's go into deep scanning, and because of the culture.
Okay. Well, NRB was born in the early days of radio, when radio was the dominant electronic media. It was way before television. NRB will be 80 years old next year. And even back then, there was persecution against the gospel. The government was looking at a way to regulate broadcasters, and when it came to religious broadcasters, they didn't understand us. Same thing today, right? The government never understands anything.
Well, until they're born again, they won't be able to.
Right.
In fact, I think the scripture tells us that it's foolishness to the unbeliever.
Yeah.
But to us, it's the power. So
well,
I don't expect them to understand.
No.
I just give up on them until they're born again.
Governments are about power,
Yeah.
and when you have a religious organization that's based on Christian principles, who says the power resides with God, there's a built-in conflict there.
Exactly.
But anyway, back in those early days, the FCC anointed the National Council of Churches to decide which radio programs could be on the networks, ABC, NBC, CBS, all the radio networks.
Kind of like they're picking and choosing now in the internet world. If you talk about that issue, you're out.
Picking and choosing now. And 80 years ago, the National Council of Churches was every bit as liberal as it was today. Wow. So all the evangelicals were taken off the air. All the gospel-centered programs were taken off the air. So the NRB was formed to petition the government for our First Amendment freedoms. The free exercise of religion should not be controlled by. At any rate, NRB came together, Christian communicators, who decided that there's strength in numbers and came together, formed around a statement of faith, a biblical statement of faith about the scriptures, about the work of Christ, and about the gospel itself. And now in these latter days, the church is facing a different kind of persecution. Rather than government, it's corporations that are trying to control.
Government, they're still doing it, but this is a sensitive area now, corporations being able to cancel you. And I think that even some of the seculars are now saying, wait a minute, I'm just saying what I teach my children out loud and I lose my job. I think that what we're seeing, especially here, the 4,000, and gave such an ovation to the governor, who you guys just heard from. Did you unbuckle your seatbelts after you heard that message and got on your feet like 4,000 people did last night here at the NRB? There are people that are saying, no, we're going to push in. And I think that most of the people were so excited last night as we opened up NRB that we're pushing in because we're not the alternative. Christians shouldn't be the alternative. We are competing. Who do you serve? God or Caesar? And tell us now, Deep Scan, because I could keep you all day. But there is a need for people to step it up a notch. And I think that that's what we're hearing a lot of messaging here at NRB with different sessions. I mean, I can go on all day with Frank. And you already know a little bit about it because those of you that watch Cure America on a regular basis already heard a few weeks ago from Troy Miller, who actually is the president. Frank tapped Troy, and Troy is just incredible, and that's why there are like hundreds of booths here today and thousands of people. We do need to professionalize ourselves, so I really want you to give some time to Deep Scan.
Well, let's work with this metaphor. In the sports world, athletes and coaches will say, you play how you practiced before the game. You play in the game how you practice before the game. When we engage in, and we're using game here as an analogy, when we engage in ministry, the Apostle Paul used sports analogies all the time, running the race, fighting the good fight, all those things. When you engage in ministry activity, your outcome will be how you're organized. And so what Deep Scan does is look at your organization from top to bottom, from board governance to management policies, communications, internet technologies, back office systems, and critically at the programs that you do to fulfill your mission and goals and objectives. In Cure's case, it's media. Cure uses research to affect the public policy process and uses media to publicize what it does to get it to a broader audience. And so what Deep Scan does come in and says, how can we organize and establish a structure and a framework and the necessary policies to enable us to do what we're called by God to do and to do it better. And so that's what Deep Scan does, essentially get them ready for practicing so that in the game they'll do it the best they can.
They'll do it the best they can and to grow into the future like we're able to do here under your leadership.
Now let me just say too, Star, that the problem for almost every organization is the same.
Yeah,
the good is the enemy of the best, the tyranny of the urgent, and you never get around to doing these things because you're just trying to do all you can do to fulfill God's call, and the activities of running an organization are massive.
Well, and what I really appreciate, and and you were going where I was getting ready to question it anyway, and I'm glad you did, is that the churches themselves, I mean, they need what you're doing because, as you just mentioned, the pastor knows his message and he knows, but he doesn't necessarily know how to go through staff, how to get all of the structures together, even to have health plans for them, even to have a retirement for themselves as they decide I'm not in the pulpit anymore. So there's so much need for what you're doing. And so I do appreciate that as you're transitioning out of chairman here, God has finished this race, and boy, is it a big race. I mean, you can't get better than getting
a 20-year marathon.
A 20-year marathon that really, leaving high, leaving well, is interesting that now you're going into that next stage to help us do what you've been able to do. Other ministries. This is not his only ministry. D. James Kennedy Ministries. You were there how many years?
Well, I worked for him for 17 years in different capacities, Dr. Kennedy. He led me to Christ 43 years ago.
Wow.
Well, and also one of the things that you have talked to me about, the need that I see across organizations too, is the board governance issue.
Oh, yes.
Because in churches, that's even more critically important. But church governance enables great ministry. Wow. If the governance is not good, and the governance is there to support the pastor, right? The session of the church or the elders or the deacons or whoever it might be. And so this is an exciting time. You've heard early, the thread running through the NRB this week is get ready.
Get ready.
Get ready and stay faithful. And so
I heard that message too. It wasn't just get ready, it was stay Christian.
Stay Christian. Stay exactly.
With this religious, natural religious broadcasters, the NRB is our branding, but we are an association of Christian communicators all over the world.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, but go ahead. I interrupted you just to say, faithful and Christian faithful.
Yeah.
So there's a whole lot of just conservative
how you organize and how you strategically plan. All of that is a precursor to being effective in the application of your mission goals and objectives. So that's what we're doing together, and that's what I'm doing for other people as well.
I am so excited about it. Thank you for stopping by. When I said, Frank, Frank, because we're in here at NRB in the exhibit hall, hundreds and hundreds pulling at him because everybody has a booth here and a presence here. Anyone in Christian broadcasting, television, radio, print, you name it, all of them, everyone. Then they're grabbing at him, so I grabbed him and I said, I'll just give you a minute.
What you don't know is she tripped me in the aisle, handcuffed me, and dragged me in here. No, I made that up. But
I took the handcuff off just so that we can look here and hold our Cure Cup. Oops, I forgot to give him the Cure Cup. Thank you so much, Frank Wright. Make sure that you follow him. And pastors, if you need a deep scan, humble yourselves and get one.